just to let you guys know, this is actually a follow-up from the prior one. I'm still sitting here. I'm still working on eating. So I'm sorry if this is not going to be the best video. But the important thing is Michael's going to talk a lot this time because I'm going to be back munching my food, trying to get myself properly the right amount of nutrients into my system so I don't just keel over halfway through the podcast because podcasting is so physically strenuous like that. This episode, I think I talked about last time, solving problems without solving the problem. This is going to be another one that's going to be pretty fun. Looks like it loves rule of 10. So we've got another 10 items. We're going to see how this goes. We will talk about it. Oops, I got to scroll back up here. And we're going to go 3, 2. Well, hello and welcome back. We are continuing our season of Developreneur, building better developers with AI. Yes, we're going to use AI this time because everybody else is using it. No, we're not going to send killer Terminator robots to your house, but we are going to terminate all of your fears about becoming a better developer. This episode, we're actually going to throw out to AI what would be a good way to talk about solving problems without solving the problem. We're going to see what happens. But first, I want to introduce myself. I am Rob Broadhead, one of the founders of Developreneur, also a founder of RB Consulting, where we work with our customers to understand their business, help craft a special recipe that's just for them, their business, how they specially work. This could be you. What is your specific problem? I know, each industry's got its family of problems, but each business has got its own little niche, its own way of approaching it. And that is required in order to find the best solution best way to use your technology, whether that is through simplification, integration, automation, or innovation. How do you take that big, expensive investment that you have and turn it into something that is a real good return on investment? That's what we do. We sit down with you and help you figure out the best way forward, use a technology assessment, and then move into a roadmap so that you can plot out your course and execute on that. Good thing, bad thing. Good thing, bad thing. Boy, it's been a week of that. So good thing, finally got through more or less. We close on a house that has been in the works for a while tomorrow. So we've gotten through lots of stuff. There's been all kinds of things that have gone on. This housing shift journey kind of thing started months ago. We're not moving into this right away. So we are not done yet. We're going to continue to move on and I'm sure have some struggles, but at least we're getting closer. So I'm going to say that's a good thing. Bad thing is, I hate to say it, but it's finally starting to get hot out. It was it's June and we've had great weather and it's finally starting to get hot enough that I'm like, it's too hot. It's like I have to turn the air on and stuff like that. So that's the bad thing. But a good thing for you guys is now you get to listen to Michael while he introduces himself.
Hey everyone, my name is Michael Meloche. I'm one of the co-founders of Developreneur, Building Better Developers. I'm also the founder of Envision QA, where we are a software company that essentially helps customers, helps businesses with their software problems. It can be anything from custom software, it can be from store-bought software, but if you are struggling with technology and your business to make your customers happy, or essentially just getting through the day with your technology working so you can get the work done, give us a call. We will walk through the trenches with you to understand all the problems and all your processes within your company, and then we will help devise a process and a program to get you to the end of your journey to improve all these caveats, all these problems that you're having. So either you will have a better customer experience with your application, or you're just going to have a better experience going into work. You'll be happy to work in your business, not hate working in your business and just, hey, let someone else do it. Good thing this time. So bad things, weather's been bad, all that crap, all the last few episodes. We got our lawnmower back that I broke a couple weeks ago. The weather's been warmer, as Rob mentioned, but it's been comfortable enough that we've actually been able to sit outside, enjoy the weather. And my wife got the little 10-foot pool up, and we were able to jump in that. It was actually not too cold. We were able to get in that and enjoy that. And we were actually able to get out to the river house and actually had decent weather for a day, but we actually had decent weather out at the river. So we are almost past this rainy season, and it is sunny skies for a while. Maybe warm, but it's still sunny. It's not cold, rainy, drabby, or snow.
Yeah, if you start hitting snow in June, we're in trouble. This episode, we are diving into, we're asking AI, as we are in each of these. Going back 2 seasons back, we're taking the topic and we're asking AI about it. So this time, the topic is solving problems without solving the problem. Now, as always, AI loves us. It thinks we're really smart and nice. So it says it's a clever and thought-provoking topic. Well, let's see how well AI was clever and thought-provoking. So first recommendation, the illusion of progress. Just writing code doesn't mean you're solving the real problem. Devs often solve symptoms, not root causes. Entrepreneurs sometimes launch features that no one needs. Message: progress isn't about activity, it's about accuracy. Oh my gosh, this is another one that just like, bam, right in the kisser. This is something we talk about way too often, about being productive versus being busy. We talk about the why. This goes back to what we talked about last time. The why. Why are you doing this? Features that nobody cares about. Bells and whistles. It's about doing stuff, adding features, building functionality that helps people solve the problem or problems better, faster. Don't make them stick around. Now, if you're in the marketing world and you want people to stick on your site and stuff like that, that's cool. Make it fun. But the problem you're solving there is that people want to go away from your site. So solve that problem properly. Don't find ways to stumble across that. I love that one so much. I'm not going to talk the whole episode, but I am going to go ahead and toss it over to you because I know you have things to say as well.
Yeah, from the marketing side, it's kind of like handing out those $10 Starbucks cards to get people to go look at your site, not fixing the problem on your site. It's like, here, we'll pay you to come look at our site, not actually fix the site to make you stay or want to come to us. Oh my God. I mean, that's probably the best example. It's like, are you busy or are you getting stuff done? Are you solving the problem at hand? We've talked about this a lot. We've actually talked about this on some projects we've been on. It gets back to, what is the MVP? What is the end goal? What is it that the customer needs to complete the project? Now, if you get the project done and you have time left, that's when you add all the bells and whistles. Do not add the bells and whistles at the beginning. Get the MVP done, then work on the extra features.
And that is, well, before we go on, I have to say that is so hard. We get into the heady times of starting a new project, and we have all these visions and all this stuff we can do, and it seems like the world is our oyster and we can do whatever we want. And the reality smacks us down and says, no, you don't have that much time, you don't have that kind of resources, and all of the other things that are the constraints that can slow us down. So just find a way to, like, it's sort of like balancing out that roller coaster of, all the excitement and we've got all this energy. And then you get towards the end and it's like, I just want this project done. It's a death march and stuff like that. Finding ways to balance that out. Actually, that is part of what I think Agile does, the Scrum approach in particular, but I don't want to get too far into that. So next one.
I'll touch on that briefly though, because with Agile though, the cool part with Agile is, with this roller coaster Rob's talking about, you may have that like high energy at the beginning. It's like, oh, we got all these ideas. You get to a certain point though, when you're doing the retrospective, throw things out like, hey, did we complete enough of this? Is there something we still need to add? Because maybe one of those fun features can be added now. Well, we're still not at the MVP, but because we're in that moment, is it something that can be done now for less time and money versus later?
Yeah, there's always that looking for opportunities, finding an opportunity to sneak something in. And it goes back to the idea of having like a backlog, we'll call it, because that's what they do in sprints, of ideas and features that, especially if it's not a big one, throw those things on the backlog. And then if you've got to like a lull or you get a little bonus time or something like that, then go ahead and implement that into it. Diagnosing the wrong problem. Here's a quote from Einstein, of all people. If I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem. Devs often fix what's broken on the surface, not what's causing the break. Encourage asking, what problem are we actually solving? For whom? Why now? This is a pet peeve I have with testers and QA and users at times, when it's like, this is broke. This doesn't work. Like, okay, you've told me absolutely nothing. Give me something I can work with. The best is when somebody will sit there, and there are a lot of tools to do this. They'll sit there, they will walk through and say, here's what I did. Here's where I got to. This is what I expected. This is what I saw. That gives us a perfect idea of this is what they expected. This is what this should do, and it's doing something different. And that's the key. And it's not just it's doing something different. This goes back to what we've talked about. Coders are going to just say, okay, I'm just going to make it do something different. All right. It's like, for example, if your logic doesn't, when you enter these three values in and your logic doesn't give you the right answer, you just hard code it to say when those three values come in, output the answer that you know it's supposed to be. Doesn't really help. It's sort of like showing your work when you were in school. It's great that you can come up with an answer, but it's also not necessarily, going to be consistent enough. So figure out what is the actual problem, and go solve that. So you're not constantly having to play whack-a-mole, changing all of the things to, address the symptoms and not the actual problem. Thoughts on that one?
Yeah, so there's a book we went to global leadership conference a couple years ago, and forget the guy. I found the book. Dan Heath was talking at the GLS, and he was talking about upstream, solving problems before they happen, and that is one of the biggest keys to being a developer, not a coder. It is not just putting out the fire, but understanding what is causing the fire. What is the overlaying problem that needs to be fixed to fix the things that are happening downstream? And that whole idea, once you get into that mind shift where it's like, you start asking yourself, well, what is the underlying cause? Why are we seeing all these problems? Once you start addressing, okay, not fixing the problems, but where is this coming from? Is this a systemic problem with the software itself, or is this a systemic problem with the foundation or the overall process of how we built the application? Is there something in the overall logic or code that fundamentally is wrong that is causing everything else downstream? If we go fix this one thing, we suddenly free up 40 hours of bug fixes because the problem is fixed, not fixing the symptoms.
Yeah, and that's again, that's one of the areas that I think is why software projects can really have an appearance of being worse than they are, because sometimes it's actually a very small bug. It's a simple fix, but because it doesn't actually get addressed, there's like these band-aids. The band-aids keep falling off, and now it looks like it's a complete train wreck when it's really not that bad. So it will behoove you. It will help you immensely to spend that little bit extra time, diagnose the problem, and try to fix it the first time. Because I guarantee you, all of my customers I've dealt with over the years, I don't think a single one that says I would rather have it fixed right away than to say, you know what, give it the right amount of time, think through it, verify it, and move forward. It is way too frustrating for all of us when we try to blow through a solution and then end up having to come back and correct the solution, basically. This goes right in to the next one, which is Band-Aid fixes and systemic solution versus systemic solutions, which is the example of like increasing timeouts instead of fixing latency issues, adding more features instead of addressing poor onboarding. Entrepreneurs often throw features at churn when the root problem is unmet expectations. I don't want to get too far into this one because, boy, this could go for days, but I will mention that this was specifically a project that went off the rails very long ago. I've talked about it before. And the whole idea was that the guy that was running the project, basically they were running out of money. They didn't have the funding to finish it. And so he figured out what he needed to do is just get more money. And so what he did is he said, well, there's all these features we're going to add. And he thought it's like, well, we'll just add all these features. So there'll be another bucket of money, a bag of money, and then we're going to be fine. Well, what ended up happening is there are all these features, and now there's all this other stuff. And they took time as well because he didn't really think through it. They took more time than he budgeted for. And now he's in a deeper hole than he was beforehand. So look for the systemic side. This is, again, the developer side of it versus the coder side of it. This is a fun one. Lack of context equals misguided solutions. Without understanding the user journey, business model, or tech limitations, devs can over-engineer or under-deliver. Real problem solving requires full stack awareness, not just code. I cannot preach enough on this is why we ask the questions. This is why we sit down and we say, okay, well, what about the requirement? What about this situation? How about that? Tell me more about it. The more you can get a conversation out of your customer about what they're doing, what they need, the more you're going to have all kinds of little hidden Easter eggs that come out and like, oh yeah, there's this thing that we do occasionally, or oh yeah, there's this report that we need, or oh yeah, there's this requirement that we have that I forgot about that, or they won't even think about it. They'll just be like, oh, well, we do A, B, C, and D. And you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. I never heard about this C thing before. Go back to that C between B and D and let's explore that. Spend some time really getting to know the problem and the users and what is it, what are you really solving? Not just like, what's the problem, but like, how is that being solved? What actually becomes a good solution? Thoughts on that? It looks like you have plenty.
Oh, yeah. So the downside to this, if you don't take the time to listen, if you take the time to ask these questions, but you don't take the time to listen to the customer. I've done this. Almost any business person has done this. It's like, oh, I understand what you're saying. Here's how I will solve it. No. Sit down, talk through the problem, make the customer do the talking, avoid yes or no questions, encourage more exploration into what it is you're discussing. As Rob said, you could get into a situation where they talk about A, B, and C, and you've never even heard of C. Well, C could be the critical linchpin to hold the whole thing together. If you miss that, you could get to the very end and find out that you do not have an MVP. You don't even have a product that the customer can use because you missed a core piece of the application. So I've heard this in many business things. I've learned this through experience. Sit down, encourage the customer to talk through the problems, prompt them when needed, and then shut up.
The best part of that, actually, the best part is then shut up, because that's, I think, what we need is don't start solving the problem before you've heard the whole problem. More importantly, don't ask binary questions. Don't say, something that's a yes or no. I have gotten so many times that I've tried to get it to that, where it's like, just tell me, can this ever occur? Or can you guarantee that this situation never happens? I don't know how many times I've had a customer say, yes, that situation will never, ever, ever occur in our business. And then 3 weeks later, they're like, you got to cover this. This happens all the time. That stuff just drives me nuts. And that's why I've gotten away from it. I'm just like, tell me how your stuff goes. Tell me about some of these processes. Let's talk about some of your customers, because then I'll start getting real answers and not just the like, okay, I'm going to answer this question for them. Moving on, the build trap. Building a product or feature doesn't mean it's solving a problem. Encourage hypothesis-driven development, MVPs that test assumptions, saying no or not yet to features requests that don't align with goals. This is really an interesting one, because we actually tend to fall on the other side of this a little bit more. We've talked more about the idea of where you never get across the finish line because you're trying to perfect it. You're trying to add like this little feature, this little tweak, or what about this and what about that? This is more we'll ship it and consider it done, and then at least now we've got customers, which you don't want customers when you ship them crap, because then they're just going to wear you out. So this is just because we have a feature or we have the product, doesn't mean it's actually doing anything useful. So this goes back to really context and things like that. It's like, are you solving the right problem? Are you solving in a way that's actually useful to your users, or is it just take them too long? Is it too annoying and too other stuff for them to actually make use of it? Thoughts on that one?
So I'm going to just throw a small thought out on this one. We see this all the time. If you are dealing with games as a service like Diablo, Path of Exile, the game software gets released. It's like, hey, it's done, but then you have these seasons or these things that go on over time, and the game from today versus 6 months from now, it's a totally different game. You basically have been sold on, hey, we think the software is good enough to sell it to you, but we're still going to work on getting it to the end product at some point. Not calling out Microsoft, who uses its its users to be their testers, because let's face it, anytime a Microsoft operating system comes out, it's really not done or stable 6 to 9 months till after it's released. There are so many bug patches there's just problems with software. Be careful with that. Make sure that what you are delivering is a solution, not something that you have to constantly keep patching and delivering. If you go back to the early days before the internet, when you actually sold software, the software had to go on physical media, had to be shipped and delivered, and that was it. That was all. There was really no such thing as a patch unless you actually had a customer call you and you had to ship them floppy disks. But in today's environment, it is way too easy to say it's good enough to ship and then get stuck in cycles of actually improving the product to get it to where it really should have been when it shipped.
Now, I don't want to say that's separate from an MVP. There's a difference from having a minimally viable product and selling it at your customers and saying, hey, this is version 1. We are solving this problem, and all we're going to do is we're going to solve that problem and solve it well. Because then what you're doing is you're selling them on that problem, that solution. You're saying, we're solving it, cool. And they're going to say, and it needs to, that's the minimum viable product part of it, is it's like, it solves it, it's sufficient. They are now happier people than they were otherwise. Then you can come out with version 2 and say, all right, now we're going to find a better way to solve that problem, better way to skin that cat. But that's not the same as we're just going to throw it out there, and minimum viable product is for your users. It's not for you to just be like, okay, we're done. We want to at least get something out there and generate revenue. And I know that is difficult with when you're in a public company, or when you've got customers breathing down your neck, or investors or things like that. It can get difficult very quickly. Moving on. Premature optimization. Example, spending days optimizing performance when the product doesn't yet have users. Solving future problems wastes time. Ask, is this a problem worth solving right now? This I have had fights about, because, and on some serious number of occasions, because it's, yes, that is important. No, that is not important right now. We are not there yet. If you're sitting there worrying about the colors and the font on your application, and you don't even have all of the pages done yet, you don't even have any of the key features done yet, then you're cart before the horse. You are not where you need to be. It does not mean that you don't want to think about those things. That does not mean that you will not be necessarily frustrated down the road when you're like, gosh, it would have been nice if we had known what all of these pieces were, what these fonts and colors were before we built all these screens. That could have made it nicer. But the thing is that you didn't even know those screens were going to exist back then. So you probably would have spent a lot of time doing something that you really didn't need to do. And that is a really big developer piece, is understanding when to actually execute on some of these tasks. Because there's a lot of stuff. If you look at building applications, a lot of things that go on in building software. And there is essentially a time and a place for each of these. And it's easy to get sort of focused, a little bit too much focused on like, well, we need to do this thing right now, and not stepping back and going, wait a minute. No, we actually don't. And this goes back to something we've talked about earlier, is like spending too much time up front and not spending enough time towards the end. Now you're at the end and you have all these things you have to have, but you wasted your time on stuff that you don't actually have, that you don't need to have. It's like, it'd be one of those things where it's like you're jettisoning things, you're spending too much of your money early on. And now when you have to actually buy, like, I don't know, food and clothing and somewhere to, a house, well, you already blew all your money out there. And yeah, you've got like a nice toy or something like that, but you don't have food and clothing. It's the same kind of thing. It's resource management, and it's making sure that you make sure that you're doing the right thing at the right time and not getting caught in those little rabbit trails. Your thoughts?
Yeah, we have both been in many, not us all the time together, but we have all been in situations where you may be trying to solve a problem. And in the process of solving the problem, you're trying to be a little more forward thinking. For instance, if you are like working with databases or working with message queues, you may come to a point where it's like, well, we need to do load testing, or we need to make sure that we can handle the load of these interactions, these integrated systems we have. There is a point within the life cycle of an application that, yes, it is time to do that. At the beginning, no. Until you actually have enough of the systems in place where you can actually see how it works, it is not efficient. It's not worth your time or resources to spend the time testing that before you get there. Because you might get there and that integrated system may completely change. You may find a different solution. So, especially in the early stages of a project, especially if you're like thinking, oh, we may look at this, or we want to use this, or we try to use this, don't get too involved in the testing, the load testing, or feature set till you get to the point that it is fully integrated within the application. Yes, you want testing. Yes, you want to make sure it works, but don't go too far. Just make sure you got the basics and move on.
I'll take this to another thing that's like an easy analogy, or an easy example is spending too much time on the design of a page and the layout of the labels and the fields and things like that when you're early on, when you're just putting that thing up. Because there's a lot of times that some of those fields will disappear. Some of the labels will change anyways. Maybe that whole screen or page will go away at some point. There are a lot of things that can happen where you end up, and it is a little bit of a crapshoot. There's going to be times where you're like, it would have been nice if we had spent more time on this early on. But your goal is to not waste your time on things that end up not being part of it. You don't want the stuff that ends up on the cutting room floor to be stuff that you spent a lot of time on. You don't want to be like at the end of, like, you've created this big movie and you spent 90% of your budget on a scene that now you are not even going to use, something like that. That's sort of where you can go with some of these. You can get way too lost in the weeds and not realize that some of these things you don't really have a firm enough. It's not firm enough yet where you're going to go to really spend that time on it.
Now, I want to add on to that, though, because there are some benefits to some pre-planning. So at the big, not in the middle, but at the beginning of the project, throw everything at the wall. Literally, like any idea, get it out there, whiteboard, brainstorm as much as you can. But then, as Rob mentioned, get it to the point where you whittle down to what you need for the MVP, and then cut the fat. But try to spend enough time at the beginning to maybe a day or two, but have enough people talk about the idea so that you cover as much as you can to then cut it down to what you actually need. Because if you don't do that, you might literally miss a key feature that you need, that you get to the end and you're like, oh crap, I now need to build this really quickly or we're not delivering.
And this goes to I'll throw the other ones out real quick and then do a little wrap thought here as it wrap up. So problem solving is an exploration, not execution. When solutions create new problems, we see that all the time. Start with the outcome, not the output, and redefining success. Now, I've got a couple items that we'll probably cover in the bonus we do in the after the audio wraps up and we have the post-show video. But the thing that we sort of a theme that has come through a lot of these is spending the right amount of time on things. Is you don't rush it. Don't jump in and just be like, okay, I'm like checking stuff off. That's really more of a coder kind of thing to do. Developer is going to say, you know what? This is not a science. There's definitely an art to this. And sometimes it takes a little time for things to bake in, for the right creative juices to start flowing, things like that. So, spend your time, like, take a step back, give the tasks that you need to do the amount of time that they need to get them done. Don't try to rush your way through it. Don't try to cram, a square peg into a round hole. Allow things to go the path they need to. Yes, you're going to have to push sometimes. Yes, there's going to be stress. Yes, there's going to be times you're going to like do more than you want, spend more time on something than you want to, but make sure that you're not often spending less time than you needed to. I think that is where we end up, kicking ourselves way too often for doing so. Also, don't kick yourself for not sending us an email. Shoot me an email at info@developreneur.com and let us know your thoughts. What are some of the things that you've run into? Whether you listened to this a couple seasons ago, or whether you're listening to it now and you're like, oh, this AI thing really has got some great ideas. I should look back. It probably has better ideas than we have, although we are like lining up. So I'm feeling pretty good about it. That being said, I'm not going to poke you for any other stuff. You know where to see us. You know where to leave us feedback and all that goodness, whether it's at Developreneur on YouTube channel or podcast, wherever you get podcasts. Also, if you find it somewhere that you get podcasts and we're not there, let us know. We want to make sure we're there. As always, go out there and have yourself a great day, a great week, and we will talk to you next time. Bonus material.
All right, so go back through those last three topics.
Let's see. I think I want to do the last one. So, problem solving as an exploration, not execution. Great developers and entrepreneurs explore problems deeply before attempting solutions. When solutions create new problems, tech debt, complexity, brittle systems all can stem from solutions that weren't fully thought through. Gosh, I'm really going to want to come back to that. Start with the outcome, not the output. What result are we trying to achieve should come before what are we building.
Oh, I like that one.
Redefining success. Success isn't just solving a problem, it's solving the right problem in the right way. Sometimes the best solution is doing nothing, reframing the problem, killing a feature, saying we don't need to build this. That,
oh my God,
the one I want. This is something that goes back to the heart of the RB consulting side, way back when I said sometimes, yes, we build technical solutions. Sometimes we talk to people, and the best solution is a pencil and a piece of paper. Sometimes there are processes that are so broken, it's like you need to define your processes first. Sometimes it is like, I don't know how often there's been things where it's like, there's a feature that gets added on, and suddenly it slows the whole thing down and it makes everybody hate the application. It's like, just kill the feature. Sometimes it's like, you know what? The best thing we can do with that is not take it on, because that's not our wheelhouse. That turns us into something we're not. And there are so many products and applications out there that did that. They did something nice, and then they're like, oh, we got to grow, and they add some features. The next thing they know, they've grown into somewhere they don't need to grow into.
God, that last statement you just said there, I mean, that's literally how I went from Meloche Consulting to Envision QA, because I was literally solving problems for everybody for anything, which got me in trouble because it's like, well, really, you don't need that solution, and at the end of the day, you got to pay the bills, so you're going to do what the customer wants. But unfortunately, in the software world, this is kind of a key difference between business and software development. The customer is always right until they're wrong. Because in the software development side, something they want may not be the right solution for what the problem is. You have to stand your ground and tell them, this is not a good idea. This will break things. This is wrong. It is hard to do because as a business owner, you want to please your customer. And unfortunately, the please your customer, the customer's always right mindset leads to bad things. It's not always right. You do need to listen. You do need to support them and, make them happy. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that what you deliver is right, not something that is just complacent and wrong.
That's the thing is if you're building software, you're essentially a consultant of sorts. You are helping people solve a problem. And if they can't properly contextualize the problem, if they're not addressing the problem right, if they don't see what the problem actually is, sometimes you're going to have to step in a little bit and say, well, no, here's actually what you're doing. Now, that doesn't mean that you're lecturing them or you're, telling them better, because I mean, in some cases, I guess it technically, yes, it is, but it's because you're listening to their problem, you're understanding what it is, and you're saying, oh, you have, you being the customer, maybe they have done something that we have just listed you shouldn't do. Things, for example, like they started solving a problem before they really thought through what the problem is. So sometimes that's what we need to do, is be that, like, that voice that slows them down a little bit and says, wait a minute, think about this. Is that really the problem you need to solve? Or is there this other thing that if we take that away or we solve that problem, then this other problem goes away? And so there is, definitely complexity and layers of those.
I have a great example of this. So I had a friend slash acquaintance that I had years ago that came to me because he knew I wrote software, and he wanted me to build him this website, and he wanted it to be full e-commerce, all this stuff. And I kept telling him, look, all you need is a Spotify account, get some product, see if people will buy your product before you invest all this time in a solution. The problem was he was like, nope, I want the solution and I will get the product once I'm ready. He spent so much time on the website on what he wanted for infrastructure. He had almost no money left when we got to the end for the product. He had barely anything left for building what he wanted for a company. And I told him from the beginning, it's like, dude, let's go the cheap route, the Tim Ferriss route. Like, let's do A/B. Let's throw up a website. Let's just say, hey, will people buy from you? Throw a couple of t-shirts up, throw something up, and see if it will work. But he was out of money before he got to that point. And I had been telling him all along, stop. No, no, no. I mean, I could have quit, but I had to pay the bills too. I mean, it's one of those catch 22s where it's like you do the best you can for your customer, but at the end of the day, you are at the service of your customer.
Yeah, you do what you can, but there's a point where, and honestly, there are situations where that customer may know better than us, where we're like, we really think we know it. And they're like, no, we really know this, really understand this problem, this industry or something like that. And so you're like, okay, I've given you my thoughts. They, are outweighed by yours and your opinions. And so sometimes you have to move on. And you don't have to, I guess you can always say, like I said, you could say, well, I'm not going to do it, but that's usually not the best way. Your better bet is say, okay, if you're going to do this, then I'm going to do my best to help you get to that solution. Because you already have in your mind then some warning flags or something like that, where you're like, well, here's where things could go wrong. So you can help them maybe mitigate some of those risks as part of being that steady advisor as you move forward. That being said, it is time for us to wrap this one up. Thank you so much for your time, for hanging out, for putting up with me as I've been trying to get some food in my system so I don't starve to death. Luckily, I have not. I'm still here. Lucky for me anyways, maybe not for you. We will return next episode. We are going to continue moving through these AI questions. This is pretty cool so far. So I think this is going to be a real fun season. As always, go out there and have yourself a great one. We will talk to you next time.